Inside your body right now, a silent system is deciding whether your next meal becomes life or slowly becomes disease. Most of us believe digestion is simple. You eat, you feel full, and life moves on. But one night, after a completely ordinary dinner, I realized something unsettling. While I was sitting quietly at the table, a hidden system inside me had already started working with a precision I could not see, control, or even fully understand. That thought stayed with me longer than the meal itself. It made me wonder how much of my life depends on processes happening in silence. The truth is, inside your body right now, a complex biological operation is unfolding. Not occasionally, not only when you feel hungry. Every minute of every day, a network of organs is coordinating movements, releasing chemicals, and making decisions that determine whether the food you eat becomes energy, tissue, or waste. And the more I learned about this system, the more I realized how fragile and remarkable it really is. What surprised me most was how automatic it all feels. We rarely stop to think about the journey that begins the moment food enters the mouth. We do not feel the muscles contracting in sequence. We do not sense the enzymes breaking molecules apart. We do not notice the signals traveling between organs, telling them when to act and when to rest. Yet without this quiet cooperation, the body would not survive for long. At some point, my curiosity turned into something deeper than interest. It became respect. The digestive system is not just a tube that moves food from one place to another. It is a living system that transforms matter into life itself. Every bite you take sets off a chain of events that builds your blood, repairs your muscles, and fuels your brain. So I decided to follow that journey closely, step by step, starting from the very first moment food touches the mouth, to understand how something so ordinary can sustain something as extraordinary as a human life. So I began where every journey of digestion truly begins, at the moment food first meets the mouth. What struck me almost immediately was how much happens before we even swallow. I used to think chewing was just preparation, a simple mechanical step to make food easier to handle. But the more closely I paid attention, the more I realized that this is where the body quietly starts making decisions. The mouth is not just an entrance, it is the first laboratory. When teeth press down on food, they do more than break it apart. They change its future. By crushing and grinding each bite into smaller pieces, the teeth create more surface for enzymes to reach. It is a simple physical act, but it determines how efficiently the rest of the digestive system will work. I began to notice how quickly this process happens, how naturally we perform it without thinking, and how easily we rush through it. That realization made me slow down. At the same time, another transformation unfolds that we cannot see. The salivary glands release saliva, and within that clear fluid lives an enzyme called amylase. This enzyme immediately begins breaking down carbohydrates into smaller molecules. Digestion, in other words, does not wait for the stomach, it begins the moment food touches the tongue. As chewing continues, the food gradually softens and mixes with saliva, forming a smooth, moist mass known as a bolus. The tongue then pushes this bolus toward the back of the throat, and from there it enters the esophagus, a flexible muscular passage that moves food downward through coordinated waves of contraction. These movements happen with remarkable reliability, even when gravity is not helping. What fascinates me most about this stage is how quiet it feels from the inside. There is no sensation of machinery, no signal that something extraordinary is happening. Yet in those first few seconds, the body has already begun transforming food into something the rest of the system can understand. And then, almost without warning, that quiet journey delivers the food into a place where the rules suddenly change. When the bolus finally reaches the stomach, the environment becomes far more intense than anything before it. I used to imagine the stomach as a simple storage space, a temporary holding area where food waited its turn. But the more I learned, the more I realized that the stomach is closer to a controlled furnace than a container. It is a place where chemistry becomes powerful enough to reshape matter at a molecular level. One detail that surprised me was how early the stomach prepares for its work. Sometimes, just smelling food or seeing a meal can trigger the release of gastric juice. The body begins preparing before the first bite even arrives. That realization made me appreciate how deeply connected our senses are to our biology, how the anticipation of food can activate a system long before digestion truly begins. Inside the stomach, specialized glands release a mixture known as gastric juice. This fluid contains hydrochloric acid, one of the strongest natural acids produced by the human body. Its role is not only to break down food but also to protect us. Every meal carries bacteria from the outside world, and the acidic environment of the stomach helps destroy many of these potential threats before they can travel deeper into the body. At the same time, this acidic environment activates an enzyme called pepsin. In its inactive form, it is harmless. But once exposed to acid, it transforms into a powerful tool capable of breaking proteins into smaller chains. These fragments will later become part of muscles, hormones, and tissues throughout the body. It is strange to think that the strength in our bodies begins with molecules quietly dissolving in acid. What continues to amaze me is the balance the stomach must maintain. It produces substances strong enough to digest food, yet it protects itself with a layer of mucus that shields its own walls from damage. Every few seconds, the stomach muscles contract, mixing food and gastric juice into a thick, semi-fluid substance called chyme. The transformation is steady, deliberate, and carefully controlled. And just when this process seems complete, the stomach releases only small amounts of this mixture forward, preparing the next organ to take over the work. And that careful release from the stomach is what delivers the partially digested food into the place where the real work of nourishment finally begins. When the chyme enters the first section of the small intestine, the duodenum, I started to see digestion in a completely different light. Up to this point, food had been broken down and prepared, but here, something more decisive happens. This is where the body determines what will be kept, what will be used, and what will eventually be discarded. It felt less like digestion and more like selection. One of the first challenges the small intestine faces is the strong acidity carried over from the stomach. To protect itself and allow digestion to continue, the pancreas releases a fluid rich in hydrogen carbonate. This substance gently neutralizes the acid, raising the pH to a level where enzymes can function safely and efficiently. I find this moment fascinating because it shows how the body constantly restores balance. Even after intense chemical reactions, it knows how to reset the environment. Then comes a remarkable collaboration. The pancreas releases enzymes designed to target specific nutrients. Trypsin begins breaking proteins into smaller fragments. Amylase continues the work of digesting carbohydrates. Lipase focuses on fats, preparing them for absorption. But fats present a unique challenge because they do not mix easily with water. That is where bile enters the story. Produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder, bile spreads across fat molecules and divides them into tiny droplets, a process called emulsification. The first time I understood this, it felt almost elegant. Instead of forcing fat to dissolve, the body simply changes its structure, making it easier for enzymes to do their job. As digestion continues, the inner surface of the small intestine reveals its most extraordinary feature. The lining is covered with countless tiny projections called villi, and on each villus are even smaller structures known as microvilli. Together, they create an enormous surface area, allowing nutrients to pass into the bloodstream and lymphatic system with remarkable efficiency. At that moment, I realized that eating is not truly about what we consume, but about what we are able to absorb. And yet, even after nutrients have crossed into the bloodstream and begun fueling the body, the journey is still not over. What remains from digestion enters the large intestine, a part of the system I once assumed was simply the final stop. I used to think of it as a place where waste waited to leave the body. But the more I learned, the more I realized that the large intestine is not an ending. It is a different kind of beginning, one that reveals how deeply our health depends on life forms we cannot see. As the remaining material moves slowly into the colon, the environment changes again. The pace becomes more deliberate. The body begins reclaiming water, drawing it back into the bloodstream to maintain balance. Without this quiet recovery process, even a small disturbance could lead to dehydration or instability. It is a reminder that survival often depends on conserving what we already have, not just acquiring more. At the same time, the large intestine introduces one of the most surprising characters in this story: bacteria. Not a few, but billions of them, living together in a complex community known as the gut microbiome. For a long time, I associated bacteria with illness, something harmful that needed to be eliminated. But here, inside the colon, many of these organisms are essential partners. They help break down fibers that the human body cannot digest on its own. They produce certain vitamins that support normal body functions. They also compete with harmful microbes, helping maintain a stable internal environment. In a very real sense, our bodies are not working alone. We are living ecosystems, supported by organisms that share our space and contribute to our survival. Eventually, the remaining material gathers in the rectum, and the body prepares to release what it no longer needs. The journey that began with a single bite of food finally comes to completion. And every time I reflect on this process, I feel a quiet sense of respect, knowing that something as ordinary as eating depends on an extraordinary system working faithfully in the background. After following this journey, one lesson stands out to me. Digestion is not just about food, it is about respect for the body that keeps us alive every day. The way we eat, chew, rest, and manage stress quietly shapes how well this system works. In modern life, we rush meals, ignore signals, and forget that health begins with simple habits. So a practical step is to slow down, chew thoroughly, stay hydrated, and give your body time to process what you consume. Small daily choices, repeated consistently, can protect your energy, your strength, and your future health ahead today. Now I'm curious about your experience. What is one small habit you think could improve your digestion starting today? Please share your thoughts in the comments so everyone can learn from each other. And if you found this journey helpful, consider subscribing to the channel to support us and stay with us for the next discovery.